WRKS Pickens Jackson.
All systems go.
Live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the Bank Plus studio.
This is Out of Order.
Live in the studio.
It's the Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Streaming live worldwide on the Out of Bounds radio app. And on your radio at ESPN 105.9.
All set? Let's go.
The Zone.
It's a great day for you, huh?
Yeah, I tell you, it's better than average, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, Blake's been working on that for 30 minutes. And he's jumping up and down in his chair, so who knows where this show is going. Good morning, welcome in. Hope you had a great weekend, win or lose, because we had football and some really good football. Live in the Bank Plus studio. We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS. We're always powered by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook. Bet $50 there and play Dancing Rabbit Golf Club for $30. Oh, good morning. Welcome in. What a win for MSU and Baton Rouge. I just want to know if the Clarion Ledger is going to drop a front page article, A Star is Born, in referencing KJ Costello, who threw for 623 yards and 5 TDs in his debut against a top 5 recruiter. Not a bad weekend for KJ.
He walked out on that field, and it was like football Jesus had hit.
Oh, several different ways you can get in touch with us. Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line, 601-707-3750. Twitter handle, @BowBounds. And the Mississippi Ag John Deere Tractor text line is 601-885-3776. I've got the Blakey Blakester with me, as you can tell from that intro, and I'm your host, Bo Bounds. So are you, do you need medication this morning?
Yes, sir.
Let's go. How about them Bulldogs? What y'all know about it? What you know about it?
Well, I'll tell you what I know. It was a very entertaining game.
It was an incredible game.
And a lot of back and forth. And Mike Leach and his quarterback set a SEC record in their first game. What? I mean, Mississippi State fans have to be sitting there going, what is going on? This is, when they do win, they don't win like this. And KJ Costello threw the ball 60 times. 60 times.
It's walk in the park.
Dan Mullen had games where they didn't throw it 20.
Yeah. Kyle York, former Mississippi State quarterback, made an incredible joke.
That was funny.
Incredible joke. He said, I had 693 passing yards one season. It was just across 13 games. I was like, that's good.
He's self-deprecating. He's pretty funny. For our listeners, he played some in 2002, which was a monumental disaster. Anyway, all right. Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone.
Let's go.
The Mississippi Ag text line is already going. Right now, I've got love the show, guys. Good morning in Hail State. Hail State, let's go. And then Tripp says, why didn't Will Rogers make the trip?
Don't worry about those things.
Yeah, I think he was sick. You can draw your own conclusion. So
don't need no backup.
Here's my takeaway from last week on KJ Costello. There were two things that we mentioned on the show that I wasn't sure were really going to manifest, I guess, come to fruition. But KJ Costello said that something like the lights turned on and he flipped the switch on Tuesday. And sometimes you hear that and you're like, you kind of roll your eyes and you go whatever and so on. And then his quotes about how Leach's offense is predicated on wearing defenses down and eventually getting to them in the fourth quarter, third quarter, but definitely the fourth quarter. And so both of those things happen, Blake. I mean, Osiris Mitchell was quoted after the game as saying, yeah, the LSU DBs were telling us that they were tired.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
In week one, telling just that's remarkable. You don't see that very often because you talk about wearing down the defensive front with the run game, but wearing down the secondary by crossing patterns and mesh routes and just making them because Pelini stayed in man the whole day.
He did.
And so they just chased and chased and chased 50-yard line side to side all the way up and down the field.
When can you remember Mississippi State wide receivers? Now look,
Never.
some of them made contested catches, okay? And they were really good. I mean, Osiris made some and Javonte Payton and Austin Williams and others. Colin had a great day, obviously, catching the ball. But when do you remember Mississippi State receivers running wide open at times?
Never. I mean, it doesn't happen. Broken plays like once every game,
right?
But not like consistently through the game.
I guess a better way to put it is, there was somewhat, but
there was
with
space.
separation.
There was space, exactly, space,
and that doesn't happen. Like LSU over the last, forever, but definitely
Alabama.
When Dan was there, and of course Moorhead's two, deals. Is LSU? You just felt like LSU and Bama DBs were just draped over the wide receivers.
Yeah, whereas their offensive players seem to always be in space.
Right.
Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, and I know we're saying great names, but even their less talented receivers seem to always find space in the secondary. And that's what Mike Leach's system, and shout out to Steve Spurrier, coaching the receivers. I mean, that's, they put it together and it worked.
Well, yeah, it worked. Okay, let me throw this out to you, Blake. Mississippi State, in this game, LSU had more talent. LSU won field position, and LSU won the turnover battle.
That's correct.
Mississippi State won the game. They had the better quarterback, and they had the better coaching staff. Now, what I would love to do is run the numbers and see how many times, that's really supposed to happen. Even though what Mississippi State had was still, assets.
Well, I can tell you
but
according
when you don't have as much talent, when you lose field position game and you lose the turnover battle.
And you have no time to start a new staff, like no actual really work time.
But you had the better quarterback.
Yeah.
And you had the better coaching staff, and you won the game.
Which we thought you had the better staff. Well, no, we knew you had the better staff in terms of head coach.
Right.
For sure. We didn't know about the defensive coordinator situation, which I thought Zach Arnett
and there's still a lot to do there.
But they called a great game for week one.
Sure.
I mean, 7 sacks, led the SEC this week. That's incredible, especially when you consider Alabama was playing Missouri and like Georgia playing Arkansas, A&M playing Vandy. They should have racked up sacks. So I thought that was impressive, but we didn't know. We thought the better quarterback was on Mississippi State's side. But like you said, we really didn't know. And like KJ Costello said after the game, this time last year, he couldn't throw the ball.
Right.
So, I mean, we're not talking about a kid who's coming off a 4-year stellar career with one extra year because of grad transfer or something like that.
I think that really jumped out at people because during the pandemic and everything that's going on, it's tough for people to wrap their brain around who this guy is from Stanford. When he said that I couldn't throw a football a year ago, he's coming off a major. Well, let's add that. So,
Bartu says 72% of the time LSU wins that game in terms of the SEC numbers. The better talented team, regardless of everything else, the better talented team wins 72% of the time. You add in everything else, and I get that LSU. I saw all over the weekend. LSU had only 3 or 4 players coming back from the national championship team. Okay, they still have 4 and 5 stars. They're still more talented. Everything else that was in LSU's favor over Mississippi State, and State still came up with honestly a pretty resounding win.
Well, and they gave LSU the ball in advantageous situations throughout the day too, whereas Mississippi State went for 75 a couple of times, 80 something. I mean, long sustained drives. You saw the time of possession.
Yeah, it was 20 minutes in the first half.
Holy Mary Olzab. I think I've got an Erkslaven Award of Excellence, too, for today. I know what the epic performance of the weekend, the wicked performance of the weekend is definitely KJ Costello. Are we going to get A Star is Born? Headlines. A Star is Born. Where's Hugh Kellenberger when we need him? Big board coming up next. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The Out of Bounds Show, powered by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center.
Swoochie Boochie, good morning to you.
Big board. What's on the big board?
Board this morning is powered by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center. Visit MississippiSportsMedicine.com. Welcome in. Their new surgery center and clinic, Lakeland Drive, Flowood. We're recapping week 1 of the SEC. By the way, I'm a fan. 110% this year. That's all I got. I don't even know if I'll do 100 next year, but that's what I'm giving you until December 31st. Kylan Hill, first 3 seasons. 44 receptions, 394 receiving yards, 5 TDs. Kylan Hill, Saturday, 8 receptions, 158 receiving yards, and a TD.
Woof. The play he made on the waggle route out of the backfield where you come out at an angle, then cut back in front of the linebacker, catches it with a guy on top of him, shakes a tackle, breaks 2 more tackles down the sideline. That play, as Gary Daniels said on CBS, made NFL scouts move him up their draft board.
Yes.
Forget the 75-yard touchdown, which is impressive. But the play where he shook 3 guys on a passing route, that's what NFL scouts want to see. He's going to make some cash.
All right. MSU beat LSU 44 to 34. And by the way, one of those touchdowns was a pick 6 for correct. LSU.
That's correct.
And again, to say that LSU won the field position battle, holy smokes. So on paper, they have more talent. They won the field position battle. They won the turnover battle. Mississippi State had what? The more talented QB, the much better head coach, and well, obviously more explosive plays.
I mean, you could say as a whole, this is going to be wild. I'm going to put this out there. Minds are going to melt. You could say as a whole, that pass catching unit, a combination of the running backs and receivers in that scheme, just flat out outperformed basically Terrace Marshall and Eric Gilbert for LSU.
Well, no, that's a good point. I don't know who said it after the game. You may remember. But someone said that everybody in the country wanted the LSU DBs and nobody in the country wanted the Mississippi State wide receivers.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, it's accurate.
Osiris Mitchell didn't have a Power 5 offer.
Yeah.
So I don't think Austin Williams had another one either. Javonte Payton did. But anyway, the point made that everybody in the country wants the LSU DBs, their corners, their safeties, and so on. And really no one in the country wanted the Mississippi State wide receiving unit. I guess the most highly decorated was Malik Heath, and he had 1 catch for 1 yard.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, Osiris Mitchell, Javonte Payton, Austin Williams, and Kylan Hill, granted Kylan was highly recruited, and may prove to be the best running back in his high school class. But
he's going to be used in ways that I don't think he even dreamed.
Well, there's no question that had to be a lot of fun for him.
Yeah, I don't think, because what it's so awesome to watch is he got the ball with 3 or 4 guys in the box, not 8 guys in the box.
Yeah.
It was when you're getting touched,
and Leach gave him the ball in space.
That's what I'm saying. No matter, even that shovel pass screenplay was brilliant. It's basically a draw. It's a handoff, but it's a pass. And it was beautiful. I mean, nobody near him. He got the ball in space, and when you get the ball in space and you can get up to full speed, Kylan Hill is one of the top 5 to 10 people that would be hardest to tackle in college football.
This is so funny. We just received a text on the Mississippi Ag John Deere Tractor text line. Bo, don't dog out LSU. They now lead the nation in rushing defense.
Woof. That's fantastic.
I have not heard that.
That's good.
And that is really
Bo Pelini was
really
locked down.
Funny.
Lockdown defense.
Lockdown defense from Bo Pelini and the LSU Tigers, so that hold on, let me make sure I get this right. Mississippi State had 16 rushes. If you take out Costello's 38 yards, they had 9 yards. Depends on how you want to run it. But anyway, so LSU number 1 in rushing defense in the country, but last in passing defense. Ole Miss loses to Florida 51-35. And they looked good at times throughout the day. One thing Lane Kiffin's going to do is get his playmakers the ball. And you start with, their biggest playmaker last year was, other than John Rice Plumlee, was Elijah Moore. And Elijah Moore had 227 yards receiving, Blake.
Yeah.
And so he was the toast and talk of their offense. And Lane made it a point to get their playmakers the ball.
Elijah Moore had 227 yards in this game receiving. Mississippi State averaged 238 yards passing last year per game. So Elijah Moore putting in a Joe Moorhead day against Florida.
Shots fired
I'm
early.
sorry. I'm a little excited. I apologize.
What do you think that staff was thinking after watching the game on Saturday?
Why is there air?
Well, that too. We'll answer that question later in the week. Are we going to the Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, 601-707-3750. I'll take a quick call. Clay, what's up, man?
Oh, what's up? Y'all hit on most everything. I mean, Colin Hill, kid made some money. I mean, he's going to make more as the season goes on. Here was the most impressive thing to me. As a State fan, I know that they're going to get us excited at the last minute. They're just going to get up and walk away. But when they threw the interception, fumbled the ball, tied the game, and look, it ain't always going to be this wonderful and great, I know, but the calmness of the team, just to not panic, walk out there, continue to do your job, what you're supposed to do. And I think that point they take on the attitude of the coach because, Mike Leach never shows emotion. But we didn't quit. There wasn't here they come. Let's just roll over and let them score 10 more and we'll lose 44-34 and go home. But, they bowed up and said, okay, we got this, fought back. That was the most impressive part for me. Take the 623 yards, Colin Hill receiving the ball, is the fact they didn't quit, they didn't panic, they didn't, heck, they took on the attitude of their coach and just finished the game. Didn't do what everybody expected them to do, roll over and let LSU have their win when it's National Championship flag raising day.
Thanks for the call, Clay. I appreciate it.
He is right, though. Mullen, I love Dan Mullen and what he did, but the difference in offensive philosophy is with his Big Ten power zone run, it's a grind it out, slow it down when you get the lead. Leach is just like, I'm just going to score as many points as physically possible so that in case you do start to come back, we're ahead.
He never checked up when they started turning the ball over.
Yeah.
He kept attacking downfield.
75 yards, 7 plays. 75 yards, 6 plays. 86 yards, 12 plays. They were moving the ball. You had a couple 3-and-outs, and you had a couple mistakes. Obviously, back-to-back, the interception and the fumble by Costello trying to make a play happen. But you'll live with that when you throw the ball 60 times. Things are going to happen.
When you throw it 60 times, you are going to throw it to the other team.
Yeah. And when you
at least once, if not twice,
drop
pretty
back
much a game.
65 to 70 times because you add in sacks and plays that he scrambles on or something like that,
sure,
you're going to fumble the ball.
Right.
I mean, he's got the ball.
No, he does have to get better at ball security. But as far as picks on 60 attempts, I think Leach can live with it.
Yeah, 5-2. If you're going 5-2 every game, you're going to be okay.
Mississippi State and Ole Miss type teams don't lose the turnover battle
and win the game by
and
10.
the field position battle and throw a pick six and win the game against a top 5 recruiter. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
So the main things that happened was KJ Costello was the best. I mean, best player on the field's not what I'm trying to say because there's some other guys, LSU and MSU.
But the best at the most important, impactful position.
The best at the
doubt.
most important position by far and away. And then Mike Leach and his staff absolutely coach circles around Eddie O and his staff. And what you saw Saturday is who Eddie O is. I mean, Ogeron has to walk in the restaurant and the table has to be set. The filet has to be served. The wine's already uncorked. Everything's already poured. The sides are on the table. The lobster's there. Everything's there. Leach can walk in the restaurant and there's nothing there. There's no tables. There's no chairs. You haven't gone to the grocery store yet to cook the food. That's the difference. And that's why that staff coach circles around Eddie O. Steve Robertson coming up at 7:35. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Mississippi Ag text line 601-885-3776.
Play Dancing Rabbit Golf right now and enjoy great low rates. The ultimate golf experience awaits you at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club's Oaks and Azaleas Championship courses. What better way to spend your day than at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club? And they have incredible discounts available online, as low as $35. And don't forget about Dancing Rabbit's amazing stay and play packages. Book your tee time for as low as $35 at DancingRabbitGolf.com. Dancing Rabbit Golf Club, the Augusta.
Ready? This is the SEC Insider Hit. Presented by your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Go local. Go with a home team.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. Recapping the weekend. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for making us your SEC football show of choice. Huge win for Mississippi State down in Baton Rouge. Mike Leach's debut. They throw for 600 plus. I know all y'all had that. And their wide receivers looked legit. Not sure that's ever happened where that many of them looked that good in the passing game. And I know they've never had a quarterback that could throw it like that.
I saw deep balls that...
Not that Dak didn't turn into a wonderful passer, and they've had a few other guys that could deliver it, but never a guy... You, as an MSU fan, if you were watching that game, you have never, ever witnessed anything like that from your team. You've had other teams in the league have a pure passer like that, but the ability to spray it around the field, make all the throws, short and intermediate, but then also go down the field to Osiris and some other guys, Shavers. There was a lot of back and forth on the Alabama wide receiver transfer and what he was going to do and be. And he caught a nice touchdown pass, too. So everybody got involved except Malik Heath, and he'll have plenty of opportunities. But, Blake, that's the best pure passer. Now, I understand scheme and coaching is part of the gumbo.
But you got to throw the football.
You have to be able to throw the football and deliver. And there seemed to be some back and forth during camp. One quote that you heard that I thought really jumped out at us, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, that they said they had to take the Stanford out of him.
Yep.
And I thought that was an interesting quote coming out of the program. Not that they don't have respect for Stanford, but this offense is totally different. One thing that KJ Costello was able to do was process and get the ball out of his hands. I understand there were some fumbles. There was pressure. LSU has great players. But
Allie Gay absolutely ate up Dollar Bill Johnson.
But
he'll be good moving down the line, but that's a superstar.
He did respond at times, though. You're right, though. That was a handful for the young man out of the Mississippi Delta who hasn't really played a whole lot of football.
And Allie Gay is a bona fide day one dude. I mean, that guy's going to be a freak in the NFL, I think. Yeah. So, but like you said,
so the coming out party
it was incredible.
And then the MSU defense, and we're going to have Steve Robertson on in a couple of minutes. The MSU defense, Blake, Brule, Wheat, Marquise Spencer,
Jordan Davis.
Yeah, those guys played well. They don't have Willie Gay, Jeffrey Simmons type guy, Chris Jones, Fletcher Cox, a bona fide superstar, but they got some interesting pieces. And at the point of attack, I thought the defense played really well. And again, they were put in some, bad situations and were able to come out of that and keep the dream alive of upsetting the LSU Tigers. Again, I said the better coaching staff won without a doubt. The best quarterback on the field wasn't close. Not a shot at Miles Brennan. He had a nice day. Was KJ Costello. Out of bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. The SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau insurance agent in any of the 82 counties in Mississippi. You can go local and go with the home team. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app, and you can watch the show right now on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Out of Bounds Sports. We welcome in Steve Robertson, Hail State Insider, GenesPage.com. Steve was at the game. Steve, at what point during the game did you say to yourself, This offense is legit, and they're going to be able to attack efficiently and effectively throughout the day?
I would say the answer that probably there in the second quarter, when State took the lead again, I felt like that was probably the moment that I realized that Leach had an idea of how to attack this defense and was going to be able to kind of keep LSU somewhat off balance. And little did I know that it was going to end up being a track meet where they were going to have to chase the State wide receivers all day. But, we kind of spoke about that last week, but that's kind of a byproduct of the offense, is the opportunity to kind of get in their legs a little bit, and I think State absolutely did that. You
were there. So when did you see Osiris Mitchell mentioned the DBs running out of gas? When did you start seeing that in the second half, where all this attacking space and all the attempts and getting the secondary and linebackers to run sideline to sideline and vertically? When did you see that really having an impact on the LSU defense?
I would say late in the third quarter, and that's the thing you really look at is, you had those back-to-back turnovers, with the interception and the fumble that led to LSU tying the ball game. If State has a little ball security there, this ball game is probably likely over in the fourth quarter, and you could tell, just watching those guys in their body language, going out there to line up. They would run in and off the field. There was just something missing. They didn't have that same intensity. And I'll be honest with you, there was so much woofing going on, early in that ball game. When you got to the fourth quarter and things got really tight, the only people doing talking were in maroon and white.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show and the Coors Light guest line. You're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. How would you describe? Were you surprised, shocked? I know you know that Leach and Costello are more than capable, but looking at the whole body of work after the game, what was your reaction on how efficient and the record-setting day by the two?
Well, the first thing that I'll say is I expected LSU to win the ball game. I thought State would be competitive and then possibly have a chance they could get it to the fourth quarter, but there have been some really good Mississippi State teams over the years that have gone to Baton Rouge and come home with a loss, and I didn't expect this one to be any different. But you just kind of got a sense about halfway through the deal that we perhaps have undervalued the talent and the ability of one KJ Costello, and I think that's probably the big takeaway from all of this, is that he didn't play clean, and he still set an SEC single-game passing record. What can he do if he takes care of the football? What does he do if his ball placement on that pass to Javonte Payton there in the third quarter when State was up 2 scores with the football? What if he throws that ball more to the sidelines rather than on the inside and Javonte Payton comes down with it? I mean, it's one of those deals when you begin to kind of break it down, you think KJ had a huge day, but he's capable of playing a lot better.
Yeah. How do you describe what happened with the wide receivers? Did they unlock the talent and there was more athleticism than people gave the unit credit for? Or is it Costello and Leach and the staff, Spurrier and so on, elevating their play, or a combo of all?
I think it's the sum of all those things. Had a conversation probably a month ago with a couple of staffers that shared that, some of these wide receivers have kind of been undercoached. That, these guys have some athleticism and some ability, but, they hadn't really been pushed to be better wide receivers. And I thought probably perhaps where I saw the biggest difference is in the releases. Terrell Shavers, Osiris Mitchell, they're able to get off press coverage and get down the field, and they were running by people. And if you look at that last touchdown, Javonte Payton was probably more open than Osiris Mitchell. I mean, it's like the game is on the line. The LSU is doing all they can to get a stop and perhaps force a field goal to stay in the ball game. And you got State guys just running wide open in the secondary. I mean, if there was ever a moment right there when you saw the difference in the trajectory of those two programs, it's that play right there.
So you and I discussed Mitchell the last couple of weeks, and what was going on with Leach in the psychology part? Was he trying to motivate him because he knew there was more there?
Only Mike can speak for himself, but I'll tell you and I had this discussion last week when they named Tyrell Shavers as the starter, that I thought that this was perhaps, probably a ploy to light a fire under Osiris Mitchell. And I wrote about this yesterday. Rather than pouting, rather than going into his shell, he responds in one of the greatest games of his career on one of the biggest stages that he's ever played on. That, to me, that's good coaching. And sometimes you have to do that. And I think it's also, too, a player being willing to say, you know what, I don't have to accept where I am on the depth chart. When I get my opportunity, I'm going to cash in, and he certainly did. And it's one of those things, too, you look at his transformation. This is a guy that nobody wanted. This is a receiver that State signed in June, 4 months after National Signing Day, because Billy Gonzalez and Dan Mullen had whiffed on receivers the entire recruiting process, and they have to go back late post-signing day and sign Reggie Todd and Osiris Mitchell. And if you had told me then, hey, that kid is going to be the guy to score the game-clinching touchdown at LSU, I would have never believed it. But that's what good coaching can do, is you take a guy with some potential and you coach it out of him. And I'm really happy for the kid, really happy for everybody who supports Mississippi State today, because I think everybody, probably most realistic fans, said, you know what, we can compete, but we're not going to go down there and be the defending national champions on the day they hang a banner. I mean, I think just the emotional theater behind the whole thing favored LSU, but I don't think Mike Leach buys into that stuff. I think Mike's like, you know what, we're going to go run our scheme. We don't care who you are. We don't care who you put out there on the field. We're going to go do what we do, and then we'll see where the chips fall. And I thought they did it exceptionally well, but still had some teachable moments because, again, you're -2 in turnovers and you run for 9 yards and give up, 3-4 sacks?
Right.
You can be better.
Steve Robertson recapping the game. He was in Baton Rouge on Saturday. Mississippi State with the win, 44-34. KJ Costello sets an SEC record for passing yardage at 623 yards. I don't know if MSU fans still really understand or can comprehend what they were watching, and it looked really good for most of the day. I want to stay on Osiris Mitchell real quick, and then Blake's got a question. Give me his measurables. I mean, he's never been used. He's a developmental guy. I mean, what is he, 6'4", 6'5", and what does he run? Because he ran away from some LSU defenders too.
Yeah, I mean, he's a legit 6'5". I mean, that's, you add the hair in there, he's a little bit taller, but he's a 6'5" guy, and probably comes in somewhere around 200 pounds. But he saw a burst on Saturday that I don't know that I had seen before from him, and I think that's a byproduct of coaching and physical conditioning and all this running that they do, because he hit the Jets and he just ran right on by that LSU DB that actually had the angle, and that really kind of surprised me. I thought, he may be kind of limited and run after the catch, but he showed there a couple times that he has found something. And I think it's one of those deals, too, where it goes back to, all those workouts and midnight maneuvers and Leach Beach and that sort of stuff. And, the players initially were a little bit, reluctant with all that stuff because there was a culture shift. Now, all of a sudden, they're being accountable and asked to do some things to make them uncomfortable. And then you saw the byproduct of that on Saturday when the game was on the line. Mississippi State, without a doubt, was a tougher team.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show in the Coors Light guest line. You're listening to 105.9 The Zone. Blake?
Yeah, Steve, I could talk about, tossing for 605 touchdowns all day. But I do have a question because we kind of mentioned this as the weak point coming into the season for Mississippi State, and I thought it was impressive. Can you talk about why Zach Arnett in the front of that 3-3-5 defense was able to get pressure, 7 sacks on Miles Brennan? Was that all on the offensive line? Was it all on Brennan holding the football too long? Kind of talk about that.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's one of those deals where I think the secondary also, because of the fact there were so many times that nobody was open, the rush finally got there. And, State's actually recruited pretty well, and that was really kind of one of those keys to the game is how would Kobe Jones and Marquise Spencer kind of embrace being starters really for the first time. And while Kobe didn't fill up the box score, Marquise Spencer was out there with a couple of sacks and really kind of influenced Brennan most of the day. And I think you got to give Jeff Phelps a lot of credit. He's a guy, too, that I think a lot of State fans were kind of on the fence about. But his group went out there, even when State didn't bring a lot of blitz, they were out there harassing the LSU quarterback. And listen, some of that, too, is the fact that Brennan's a little bit green, despite the fact he's been around for a few years. But that was probably one of the biggest surprises to me is how effectively State pressured the quarterback, and we talked about that as the key to victory last week. In order for State to win this football game, they had to go out there and make him uncomfortable, because if you let those guys pitch and catch, they're going to beat you. And I thought State did a great job in every facet of that part of the game. Is they rushed the passer and they really contested those catches, and very rarely did you see a LSU guy just kind of running free.
Who was your MVP on the defensive side of the football?
Man, that's a great question. I think I'd have to go with Marquis Spencer, just because of the fact that he was consistently beating his guy and getting his guy back into the quarterback. But a lot of guys that kind of stood out that maybe we hadn't talked as much about. Tyrus Weed, I thought, was very impactful, and he's a guy that hasn't been mentioned a whole lot in our media sessions with the Mississippi State coaching staff. And that's exciting in and of itself, because these guys, now they've got a big win, the buy-in is going to be that much more important, because now they realize this coaching staff knows what they're doing. And so rather than being somewhat reluctant to buy into everything, now it's like, you know what, let me go ahead and put my personal feelings aside and just kind of settle in, because this could be a pretty wild ride.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show, genespage.com, 247 Sports, the Boneyard Podcast. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. We're recapping the huge win for MSU over LSU, 44-34 in Baton Rouge. Taking Costello out, who was your MVP on offense?
I think I go with Osiris Mitchell. I think that he was a guy, obviously, that you could say had not reached his full potential. But to be fair, I think there was somewhat of a ceiling on that. You think, this guy's probably a G5 guy that ends up on an SEC team by default because State just had to have a receiver. He showed some real promise on Saturday. And I think when you look at that group, you can go up and down the page there. I mean, you had a couple of drops. Mitchell had one, Peyton had one, but by and large, they did a great job elevating and contesting for the football. And they're only going to get better from here. But I think Mitchell was probably the biggest surprise for me. But also, too, just because of the fact that anytime that you needed a big play on third down, it seemed like he was always there.
So the Mississippi State receivers made several contested catches, and I want to give them credit for that. But can you ever remember a time – and Dan had success against some really good teams throwing the football, but you still felt like there was 0 to no separation even when that was happening with wide receivers or tight ends. Can you remember a time against a top 5 elite recruiter that MSU was playing where there was that much space and separation on some of the pitching and catching between Costello and the wide receiver, Steve?
Not really. Maybe you go back to 2015, back when State had Donald Gray and Fred Ross and De'Runnya Wilson. I think, Ben, that's probably the most productive group you've had in a while. But it was one of those deals where you just didn't expect to see, in key moments, to have Mississippi State wide receivers gaining that kind of separation. That's the thing. I think it goes back to coaching. You've had the NFL guys. You had back-to-back NFL guys, and Luke Getsy and Michael Johnson coaching these wide receivers. And then Dave Nichol and Steve Spurrier show up here with the same group and make them look completely different, get better level of production. Technique-wise, they're better. Production-wise, they're better. I just think it all boils down to coaching. I think it's as simple as that. I think they're simply being coached at a higher level and held to a higher standard.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show. Blake?
Yes, Steve, I realized that yesterday was record-breaking and all that, but when you look at what KJ did, as we mentioned, throwing the deep ball, I want to talk about what I think you mentioned. The reports were that he was struggling with his touch, and I thought he threw some balls. Like you said, the one to Shavers was really nice. The one to Osiris Mitchell on the 43-yard touchdown or whatever, where he had to put it an inch over a defender's hand. And then the 3rd and maybe 15 to Caleb Gardner, where he had to touch it in right over 2 defenders. Can you talk about what I think everybody said was KJ's weakest point coming into the season, which was that touch pass ability?
Yeah, I didn't think that was evident on Saturday. I agree with you. That was one thing that Mike Leach brought up, is that sometimes he has big arm disease. That some of those quarterbacks that have the huge arm, they don't throw with a lot of touch and feel. And I just didn't think that was the case, especially on those third down plays when he had to somewhat, step up and get mobile. He didn't let the pass rush speed him up and then him overthrow. There was one to Mitchell I thought he kind of let get away early in the ball game. But, he was a guy that pretty much stayed on target. And I was real impressed with that, too. And you mentioned the Tyrell Shavers throw. I don't know if he could have walked out there and dropped it any better than he did. And that's, again, the thing you go back to. The first time this guy's, throwing a football in a competitive game in over a year. And so now that he's had this game and this level of confidence and built these relationships with these receivers, what will they do offensively against an average SEC team? Not an elite SEC team, because that's who we just faced. And granted, Derek Stingley wasn't there, and I know that's the big disclaimer now. That's the whole thing. Everybody's like, well, Stingley wasn't there. You know what? It is what it is. How many times has Mississippi State gone out and played a game without a key player in the ball game too? That's part of the game. Attrition, injuries, turnovers, part of the game of football over the course of the season. But I'm eager to see what they can do this weekend with Arkansas, who does not have anywhere close to the same level of talent on defense as LSU.
Yeah. So, Steve, think about that. LSU has more talent. They won the field position battle and the turnover battle. And Mississippi State won. Mississippi State had the better quarterback by far and away, the better coaching staff by far and away, and had more explosive plays. But still, you run the numbers. That's I don't know how often that happens between a mid to late 20s recruiter and a top 5 recruiter in the SEC going at it. Yeah, how many times has I've got 3 minutes? Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. How many times has Mississippi State been a 16 or 17 point favorite in an SEC game? Not often.
Not often. And one of the last times that I remember, I guess, was what the 17 Egg Bowl. When Matt Luke came up here and won I guess it was 17 Egg Bowl when Matt Luke and those guys came up here and won and got the job. State was a huge favorite in that game, and so. I don't buy a whole lot into these point spreads like other people do. I think Mississippi State is the better team. I think 17 is probably too low. To be quite honest with you, I don't think Arkansas was going to have the offensive firepower to kind of get into a shootout. They have some intriguing pieces. I like Burks. And I think Rakeem Boyd's one of the most undervalued players in the SEC because he's played on a horrible team. But, State's going to have to stop the run and make Felipe Franks beat them with his arm, and I don't think that he's capable of doing that. But I don't think that Arkansas has anywhere near the defensive talent they're going to need to slow this thing down. I think it's going to boil down to how well can Mississippi State execute the offense. If State can go out there with a high level of proficiency in the passing game, this game will not be close.
I think another 10 plus or maybe 15,000 plus people may go to Starkville this weekend, even though they can't get in the stadium, Steve, after that win.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that just want to be around it. I mean, it's like, you've been cooped up for so long, and even if you can't make the ball game, you just want to be in Starkville and, maybe go by Campus Bookmart, Bulldog Burger, and buy yourself some grub and get some maroon and white gear just to kind of be around it all. There's a lot of people, as you know, Bo, that, have a second home here. And, even if you can't get tickets, maybe you come up here just to kind of enjoy Starkville and enjoy the atmosphere, because I can tell you yesterday there's a lot of electricity in the air. Everywhere you went, everybody wants to talk about what the Bulldogs did because most people expected us to lose that ball game, and now you think, man, all things are possible.
Steve Robertson, the Boneyard Podcast, genespage.com on the Coors Light guest line. Steve, we appreciate it. We'll catch up again later in the week. Thanks, man.
See you soon.
All right, Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN, 105.9 The Zone, WRKS, recapping the MSU-LSU game where MSU upsets LSU is about a 17-point underdog. KJ Costello, SEC record for passing yards in his first game ever at Mississippi State. So the Mike Leach debut was a grand slam. We're going to go around the SEC in the next segment. And, yes, I've got to get to Ole Miss, but when a game like that happens, you got to lead with a big win over a top 10 team. We'll go around the horn with the SEC next.